There is a sound a combine makes when it is not broken, but obedient. First, the header drops half an inch, like it has lost the will to hold itself up. Then the feeder chain relaxes. Then the rotor, which had been turning fast enough to blur steel into a single bright circle, slows through the body of the machine, until every belt and bearing seems to be listening for permission. Maribel heard that sound at 3:12 on a Thursday afternoon, seated alone in the cab of a Green Line A9 combine, in the middle of 214 acres of late October corn. The diesel was still running. The field was still ready. The weather band on the corner of the monitor still showed a hard line of rain due before Saturday evening. But the machine had stopped. On the screen in black letters inside a white box were 6 words that felt colder than weather. Field lock active. Harvest functions suspended. Mara was 33 years old. Her father, Harlan Bell, had been dead for 21 months. Her mother, June, had been gone 5 years. The farm office still smelled faintly of her father's coffee and her mother's pencil erasers. But the field did not care about grief. The field only cared whether someone got the corn out before the rain put it flat. 42 minutes earlier, a service pickup had pulled along the end rows. Out of it had climbed Owen Klein, 29 years old, clean boots, clean shirt, a badge clipped to his belt. He had not looked like a man about to ruin someone's harvest. That was the worst part. He had looked embarrassed. "Mrs. Bell," he said, though she had never been married, and had told the dealership that 3 times. The Regional Compliance Office issued a service hold this morning. "I'm required to disable harvest operation until the account is cleared." "How much?" $15,620. Mara stared at him. Includes a non-certified repair penalty on the yield sensor harness. The system shows the harness was opened outside dealership service in 2022. "My father repaired that harness because your service truck was 5 days out and the corn was running 28% moisture." Owen swallowed. "I understand." "No," Mara said quietly. "You don't." He looked down at the tablet in his hand. "I have a daughter," he said. "She's 2. I'm not saying that to excuse it. I'm saying it because I need you to know why I came out here instead of refusing the order." That should have made her angry. Somehow it did not. The whole thing was too clean for anger, too organized. A company had sent a young father into a cornfield to do the kind of damage a company did not want to do with a human face. Mara stepped aside. Owen plugged a cable into the port beneath the operator platform. He typed for less than 2 minutes. Then he unplugged the cable, carried his tablet back to the pickup, and stood with one hand on the open door. "I'm sorry," he said. Mara believed him. Then she climbed back into the cab, tried to engage the separator, and listened as the most expensive machine on the farm accepted an order from someone who had never set foot in her field. Now the cab was silent except for the idle of the engine and the wind moving through rows that had suddenly become debt, weather, and time. Mara put both hands on the steering wheel. Then she remembered the last thing her father had told her that had not made sense. It was 3 weeks before he died. He was in the front bedroom of the farmhouse, his skin gray, his voice barely larger than breath. Mara had been sitting beside him, pretending not to count the spaces between his words. He opened his eyes and said, "Whatever they lease you, whatever they offer you, do not sell the red tractor." She had thought it was fever, but she had not sold it. 2 miles away, in the east shed, sat a 1977 International Harvester 1466. Sun-faded red. No computer, no modem, no compliance file, no password. Harlan had bought it used in 1984 with cash and had kept it running through drought, blizzard, hog market collapse, and 2 decades of people telling him it was obsolete. Mara shut down the green line, A9. She climbed the ladder slowly, and before she drove home, she turned around once and looked at the locked combine standing in the corn, like a courthouse with tires. The first thing Mara did was not call a lawyer. She went to the farm office and opened the bottom drawer of her mother's desk. June Bell had been the reader of the family. Harlan could hear a bad bearing from 80 yards away. June could hear danger in a sentence. She read every note, every lien, every warranty, every update packet that came into the house. She kept a yellow pencil in the ashtray, even after nobody smoked. When she did not understand a clause, she circled it and called until someone explained it in plain English. After June died in 2019, Harlan kept farming. He paid bills. He signed renewals. He answered the phone when the dealership called. But the pencil went still. Mara found the 2019 purchase agreement in a folder marked A9 Keep. The paper was thick, smooth, and full of language written to survive everything except sunlight for nearly an hour before she found the sentence that mattered. The owner or operator acknowledges that continued machine functionality may be conditioned on compliance with certified service protocols, software terms, and outstanding dealer balances. That sentence had not been in the contract Harlan signed. It had been added in a software terms revision pushed to the combine in March of 2021. The monitor had displayed it as an operating update. Harlan, widowed, tired, and trying to beat a wet spring, had pressed accept, the way farmers press accept on machines that will not move until they do. June would have read it. June would have circled it. June would have made a phone call. Mara sat at the desk with the contract open in front of her and understood something that made her chest hurt more than the lockout had. Her mother had not been helping with paperwork. Her mother had been the fence, and the fence had come down before any of them knew what was standing on the other side. At 5:09 that evening, Mara drove to Quincy Ag Supply and asked for Lester Quill. The young woman at the counter told her Mr. Quill had retired 3 years ago. Mara said, "He sold my father that A9. I need one answer." The young woman hesitated. Then she wrote an address on the back of a receipt. Small towns do not always save you, but sometimes they still pass a note. Lester Quill lived in a white house behind a windbreak of old cedars. He opened the door wearing slippers and a flannel shirt, and when Mara told him her name, the old man did not ask why she had come. He only said, "I wondered which bell would get hit first." They sat at his kitchen table. Lester poured coffee. He did not touch his cup. "In 2021, he said, the regional office sent a bulletin. It explained the service enforcement package. It said harvest functions could be remotely restricted for unpaid service balances or non-certified repairs. It also said we were not to describe the restriction as a lockout in customer-facing language." Mara felt the room narrow around her. Lester reached into a drawer and placed a folded paper on the table. "I copied this on my last week," he said. I was not supposed to. Mara opened it. The bulletin was only 2 pages, but it read like a confession written by men who did not expect to meet anyone they hurt. It referred to dealer-only service retention. It referred to firmware acceptance as customer consent. It referred to high-leverage harvest periods as an enforcement window. Lester watched her read it. Your mother came into my office in 2019, before the purchase was final, he said. She asked me 11 questions. The last one was whether anything in that machine could ever stop Harlan from harvesting, if the machine itself was mechanically sound. What did you tell her? I told her no. His eyes were wet now, and at the time, it was true. Behind him on a shelf near the sink sat an old aluminum pie plate with dents along the rim. Lester saw Mara looking at it. Your mother brought me an apple pie in that plate after I told Harlan he could not afford the first combine he wanted in 1984. She thanked me for not letting him buy trouble with paint on it. Mara could not speak. Lester pushed the bulletin toward her. Take it. The paper matters later, but not tonight. What matters tonight? Corn, he said. The law moves after the story has a body. Right now your story is standing in a field getting wetter by the hour. Mara folded the bulletin and put it inside her jacket. I have my father's red tractor. Lester gave the first small smile of the evening. Then call Nathan Reeve. Nathan Reeve was 76 years old and farmed 80 acres near Hull Creek, mostly because retirement had never learned his address. He answered on the second ring. Mara said, Mister, I need help. There was no pause. Tell me where. She told him about the lockout, the bulletin, the rain, the old tractor, and the 214 acres still standing. When she finished, the phone was quiet long enough for her to think the call had dropped. Then Nathan said, Bring the 1466 to my place at daylight. I've got a new idea 2-row picker in the back shed. It hasn't run since 1998, but it's inside, and it's all iron. I'll make calls. Nathan, I can't pay. This is not pay. Nathan. Mara, listen to me. In 1987, your father wrote a check that kept the bank from taking my ground. $41,000. No interest, no deadline. He told me to pay it back when the farm could breathe again. I paid him back in 1996. I didn't know that. You weren't supposed to. Your father did good quiet. That was his habit. Tomorrow I get to finish paying him back. You said you already paid him. I paid the money, Nathan said. Not the weight. At 6:04 the next morning, Mara drove the red tractor into Nathan Reeve's yard. 6 men and 1 woman were already there. Nathan stood by the shed door with a thermos in his hand. Beside him were Frank Bellamy, who had custom baled for Harlan in the 90s, Dwayne Pell, who could weld thin metal better than anyone in Pike County, Rosa Mendez, the county extension agent, wearing work jeans under a state-issued jacket, and 3 younger people Mara had seen at auctions but never really known. The shed doors opened. Inside sat the new idea picker under a gray cover of dust so thick it looked like weather. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Nathan clapped his hands once. All right, he said. Let's find out what still remembers how to work. They began at 6:23. By 8, the picker had no tires worth trusting. By 9:30, the left gathering chain was frozen solid. 11:15, Rosa Mendez had removed her state jacket, rolled up her sleeves, and was holding a flashlight in her teeth, while Dwayne cut a seized bolt with a torch. At noon, Nathan handed Mara a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. "Eat." "I'm not hungry." "Then eat angry." She ate. At 1:40, Rosa's phone rang. She walked outside to take the call. When she came back in, her face had changed. "Mara," she said, "Lester Quill drove that bulletin to Springfield this morning. The Attorney General's Agriculture Division has opened a preliminary file." Mara stared at her. "That fast?" Rosa nodded. "Because the bulletin uses the phrase high-leverage harvest periods. Nobody at the state likes a company admitting it knows exactly when a farmer cannot walk away." "What does that do for me?" "Maybe nothing by itself, but I filed an emergency harvest continuity request at 11:10. The state has issued a temporary directive. Green Line has until 8 o'clock tomorrow morning to restore harvest function, while the dispute is reviewed." Nathan, still kneeling by the picker, did not look up. "That's good." Mara looked at the old machine, half apart on the shop floor. "So why are we still fixing this?" Nathan wiped grease on a rag. "Because a promise from an office is not a machine in a field." He stood slowly, his back stiff from hours on concrete. "And because your father's tractor came here this morning. We don't send it home with nothing to pull." They worked until after dark. At 9:18 that night, the new idea picker rolled out of Nathan's shed behind the 1466. Its elevator chain clicked unevenly. Its paint was more rust than orange. Its lights were temporary lamps, wired to a battery box that Dwayne had strapped to the frame. It looked impossible. It also moved. Mara drove the tractor home under a sky with no stars. Nathan followed in his pickup. Behind him came 3 trucks, a fuel trailer, 2 wagons, and Dwayne's service rig. When they turned into Mara's lane, another truck was parked beside the east shed. Another truck was parked beside the east shed. A woman in her 60s climbed out. She wore a seed company cap and carried a red metal toolbox. "Mara Bell?" "Yes. I'm Etta Shaw. Your father loaned my husband a planter in 1993 after ours burned in a shed fire." Lester called. "I brought belts, chain links, shear pins, hydraulic hose, and coffee. I'll sleep in the truck." Mara looked from Etta to Nathan to the men climbing out of their pickups. For the first time since the monitor went white, she understood that Harlan Bell had left her more than land and debt and machinery. He had left her a line of people. And one by one, they were stepping into it. At 7:57 the next morning, Mara's phone buzzed. Green Line Ag Systems had restored harvest function on the A9 pending dispute review. Mara read the message while sitting on the fender of the red tractor. The big combine, unlocked now, waited at the edge of the north field. The old picker waited beside it, shaking slightly at idle. Nathan came up beside her. "You can run the A9 now," he said. "I know. That machine will eat 4 times what this one can." "I know. So what are you thinking?" Mara looked across the field. The South 40 was the lowest ground. If the rain came hard, that was where the water would stand first. The A9 was heavier. The red tractor was lighter. The old picker took narrow rows, but it would not sink as fast. "I'm thinking the South 40 goes first," she said, "with Dad's tractor." Nathan smiled without showing his teeth. "That is a farmer's answer." They opened the field at 8:22. The first pass was ugly. Corn snapped, husks plugged. The wagon filled slowly. Mara's hands shook from concentration. Every sound from the old picker felt like the beginning of a failure. But the row moved. One row became two. Two became six. By noon, the first wagon was full. By 2 o'clock, the A9 was running in the north field under Frank Bellamy, who had not operated a new combine in 10 years, but learned fast because harvest teaches faster than pride. By evening, the red tractor and the green line were working opposite ends of the farm, one guided by software, one by memory, followed by neighbors who seemed to arrive whenever a wagon needed moving. The dealership called 3 times. Mara did not answer. On the second day, the sky turned the color of lead. At 10:36 in the morning, the old picker broke the right gathering chain in the far south corner. The chain did not simply slip. It tore, slapped the shield, and dropped into the stalks like a dead snake. Mara killed the tractor. For a moment, all she could hear was wind. Etta Shaw drove up in the service truck and climbed down without a word. Nathan knelt in the stalks and lifted the broken chain. "This one is stretched past saving," he said. Etta opened her toolbox. "I don't have that pitch." Nobody spoke. The A9 was still running in the north field, but the south corner was softening. The rain had not started, yet the ground had begun to take on that dark shine that meant water was near the surface. If they left the south corner until last, they might not get back in. Mara felt the old cold return to her chest. Then a white service pickup appeared at the end of the lane. For 1 second, nobody moved. Owen Klein stepped out. He was not wearing his company badge. His green line shirt was untucked beneath an old canvas jacket. He walked toward Mara carrying a cardboard box with both hands. Nathan said, "You lost?" Owen stopped 10 feet away. "No, sir." He looked at Mara. "I quit yesterday afternoon." Mara said nothing. "I went home. My wife asked me if quitting fixed what I had done. I told her no. So I drove to the dealership before sunrise and pulled every old picker chain I could find from the scrap rack. This one should match." He held out the box. His hands were shaking. "I'm not asking you to make me feel better," he said. "I am asking to work." Mara looked at him for a long time. The company had sent him to stop her field. His conscience had sent him back to start it again. Finally she said, "Etta will tell you what to hold." Owen nodded once. Then he got down in the mud beside Nathan Reeve and did exactly what he was told. They had the picker running again by noon. By 3:30, the first rain appeared as a gray stitch across the western sky. The last standing rows were on the ridge above the creek. The A9 was there now, moving hard. The red tractor worked below it in the softer ground, slower but steadier. Wagons ran in a loop between field and bin. Nobody had to tell anyone where to go. The work had become a language. At 5:11 p.m., Mara brought the final wagon across the yard. At 5:33, the first hard rain hit the machine shed roof. By 5:40, the field was no longer harvestable. All 214 acres were in the bin. None of the South 40 was lost. Mara stood in the shed doorway while Rain hammered the tin. Nathan stood beside her. Rosa Mendez leaned against a post, soaked through the shoulders. Owen Klein sat on an overturned bucket with his head in his hands, too tired to hide that he was crying. Nobody made a speech. Farmers know some victories are too big for noise. After a while, Nathan removed his cap. Harlan would have measured the rain first, he said. Then he would have pretended he wasn't proud. Mara laughed once, and the laugh broke something loose in her. She walked through the rain to the red tractor, put her hand on the warm hood, and kept it there until the metal cooled beneath her palm. 6 months later, Mara found the cedar box. It was tucked behind a stack of planter plates in the east shed, wrapped in a feed sack and tied with baler twine. Her father's handwriting was on the top. Mara, when needed. Inside were 37 envelopes. Each envelope carried a name: Nathan Reeve, Lester Quill, Etta Shaw, Frank Bellamy, Rosa Mendez's father, the widow who had lived on County Road 8, the elevator manager who had gone broke in 2002, a hired man Mara barely remembered. Inside each envelope was proof of something Harlan had done and never told her. A copied check, a note to a banker, a repair bill paid in cash, a fuel account covered for 1 winter, a tractor loaned for 3 weeks, a hospital payment made under someone else's name. At the bottom of the box was 1 sheet of paper, dated 19 days before he died. Mara sat down on the shed floor before she read it. Her father had written in pencil, "Mara, if this box is open, then the farm has asked more of you than one person can carry. That day comes to every farmer if they live long enough. Do not mistake quiet help for weakness. Your mother kept the papers straight. I tried to keep the people close. Both jobs matter. Let them come. Then when your time comes, be the one who comes for somebody else. Love, Dad." Mara read the note 3 times. Then she carried the box to the office and placed it on June's old desk, beside the 2021 bulletin, the emergency directive, and the aluminum pie plate Lester Quill returned to her after his daughter found it wrapped in newspaper. The lawsuit took longer than the harvest. Lawsuits always do. Green Line denied wrongdoing, then revised its language, then settled with a group of farmers whose stories sounded too much like Mara's to be dismissed as misunderstanding. The settlement did not bring back anyone's lost crop, not resurrect Rosa Mendez's father, whose farm had gone under after a service lock in 2020. It did not erase the afternoon Owen Klein plugged a cable into Mara's combine, because he thought obedience was the price of feeding his child. But it did one thing the company had not expected. It made the invisible visible. The bulletin, the lockout, the service language, the harvest window. The quiet assumption that a farmer would pay anything when rain was coming. After that, farmers started reading their screens differently. Dealers started answering harder questions, and in machine sheds across 3 counties, old tractors that had been parked for sentimental reasons began receiving batteries, oil changes, and attention. The Green Line A9 still works on Mara Bell's farm. So does the red tractor. Once a month, Mara starts the 1466 and drives it around the home place with no implement behind it. Not because it needs the exercise, though it does. Not because it is efficient, because it is not. She drives it because some machines are not kept for what they can outwork. They are kept for what they cannot betray. On the office wall hangs a photograph taken by Rosa Mendez at 5:08 p.m. on the day the rain came. In it, the red tractor is coming up from the South 40, with the last wagon behind it. The sky is black. The yard light has already come on. In the background, the unlocked A9 sits near the bins, huge and useful, and no longer in charge. If you look closely, you can see Mara in the tractor seat, one hand on the wheel, eyes forward. Behind her, on the fender, there is only mud and rain and old red paint. But Mara knows what else was there. Her mother's pencil, her father's quiet checks, Nathan's unpaid weight, Lester's copied bulletin, Etta's toolbox, Owen's shaking hands, 37 envelopes, one old tractor, and a line of people no software could reach. The machine stopped, did not. The paper threatened the farm. The people answered, and when the rain finally came, the corn was already home.